Hello, and welcome to Popcorn News. Something to watch while you eat popcorn. Ill fares the land, to hastening ills a prey, where wealth accumulates and men decay. Those lines are from the poem The Deserted Village by Oliver Goldsmith. He lived in the 1700s, so please pardon possible sexism in the words "and men decay." Women can decay too. Where wealth accumulates and men decay, the chief economist of the World Bank published an article on January 1st pointing to a remarkable statistical trend in high and middle income countries. From 1995 to 2015, labor income dropped from 61% to 57% of GDP in the US, from 66% to 54% in Australia, from 61% to 55% in Canada, from 77% to 60% in Japan, and from 43% to 34% in Turkey. This remarkable statistical trend points to an accumulation of wealth at the top. Thus, wealth accumulates, men and women decay, and ill fares the land. It was back in the times of President Grover Cleveland that there was a financial panic, as these things used to be called. It was the Panic of 1893. The Panic of 1893 was a serious economic depression in the United States that began in that year. Here is how it was described by John Dos Passos in his USA trilogy. Gold was draining out. The country was ruined. The farmers were howling for a silver standard. Grover Cleveland and his cabinet were walking up and down in the Blue Room at the White House without being able to come to a decision. In Congress, they were making speeches while the gold reserves melted in the sub-treasuries. Poor people were starving. Coxey's army was marching to Washington. For a long time, Grover Cleveland couldn't bring himself to call in the representative of the Wall Street money masters. J.P. Morgan sat in his suite at the Arlington, smoking cigars and quietly playing solitaire until at last the president sent for him. J.P. Morgan had a plan all ready for stopping the gold hemorrhage. And after that, what J.P. Morgan said went.
On Wall Street. Jack, like Pierpont, followed his father into the family business. And business was booming. Morgan's bank acquired more companies, placing Morgan and his partners on boards of directors all over the country. But the American economy was fragile, and in 1893 the stock market crashed. the nation was thrown into a devastating depression. More than 100 railroads declared bankruptcy, causing a domino effect that threatened other businesses and promised complete collapse of the economy. Once again, powerful men called upon Pierpont Morgan to bail them out. Morgan reorganized the railroads by streamlining operations and was quickly able to reverse the downward spiral. But his help came at a price. Morgan gained financial control over many of the companies he had consolidated. His far-reaching control coined a new term, remorganization. Morgan was becoming one of the most powerful men in the world, and powerful enemies were beginning to emerge.
J.P. Morgan had the U.S. government in the palm of his hand. In 1907, there was another panic. The bankers wanted to hoard cash in the crisis. J.P. Morgan was looking very grave. An agreement for a banker's pool had been drawn up, but no one was eager to sign on. Morgan walked up to Edward King, a key banker. He put his hand on King's shoulder and said, "There's the place, King, and here's the pen." King took a gold pen and signed. The other bankers fell into line. J.P. Morgan died in 1913. Coincidentally, the same year, another banker's pool, the Federal Reserve, was spawned. Monday's collapse on Chinese markets, with the Shanghai Composite Index closing with a loss of 6.9%, was triggered by new data showing that Chinese manufacturing activity fell in December from the already depressed level of the previous month. The December decline marked the 10th consecutive monthly contraction. Given the immense role of China as a magnet for imports, including oil and other industrial commodities, as well as manufactured goods, the indication of stagnation spread fears of a further fall in commodity prices and a deepening crisis of commodity exporting nations from Brazil and Russia to Australia and Canada. In the United States, there has been negative economic data. The Institute for Supply Management reported that its index of factory activity fell to 48.2 in December from 48.6 in November. Any reading below 50 denotes contraction. The figure for December was the weakest since June of 2009 and marked the first time since the 2008 crash that the U.S. manufacturing sector had suffered 2 consecutive monthly contractions. The McKinsey Global Institute last year published a report that gives some idea of the colossal growth of debt in the world economy, a measure of the increase in financial speculation and swindling. It noted that global debt has grown by $57 trillion since 2007, raising the ratio of debt to the world's gross domestic product by 17 percentage points. China's total debt has quadrupled, rising from $7 trillion to $28 trillion by mid-2014. The final weeks of 2015 saw mounting signs that the underlying stagnation and slump in the real economy, as opposed to the pretend economy, marked by plummeting oil and commodity prices, declining global trade, and dismal or negative growth rates, is beginning to undermine the mountain of speculative debt. The prices of energy-related junk bonds began to fall sharply, and mutual funds that speculate in them suffered a rush of redemption orders, prompting two such funds to refuse to honor redemption requests from investors. There has been a massive redistribution of wealth away from ordinary people and into the hands of a relative few. Wealth accumulates and the people decay. Ill fares the land. Thank you for watching Popcorn News.